The people who perform at the highest level don't just practice what they're doing. They practice what they're going to become. They rehearse success in their minds before they ever experience it. Olympic athletes don't wait until they feel like winners before they start performing like winners. They train for it. They practice the movements, they practice the routines, and they even practice the outcome inside their own minds. They rehearse what it feels like to succeed before they ever step onto the field. And that's what makes visualization so interesting, because you can use the same idea in your own life. You can train your brain to become familiar with the person you want to be, the life you're working toward, and the goals you want to achieve. Instead of constantly rehearsing the version of yourself that exists right now, you can start mentally rehearsing the version of yourself you're trying to become. Think about how often you practice being your current self without even realizing it. You think about your past, your problems, you replay the same situations, you tell yourself the same stories about what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. And every time you repeat those thoughts, you're reinforcing a familiar picture of yourself. So, what happens if you start doing the opposite? What happens is, instead of constantly imagining yourself struggling with the same problems, you start imagining yourself handling them differently. That's where visualization comes in. Visualization isn't just sitting around imagining that something magically appears in your life, it's mental rehearsal. Athletes use it because repeatedly imagining a movement can activate many of the same brain regions involved in actually performing the movement. You're essentially giving your brain a chance to practice before the real situation happens, and you can apply the same principle to your own goals. If you want to become more confident, imagine yourself walking into situations without confidence. If you want to become more disciplined, imagine yourself getting up and doing the work even when you don't feel motivated. If you want to become a successful creator, imagine yourself constantly creating, improving, and putting your work out into the world. Don't just imagine the final result, imagine the process. Because the person who achieves your goal isn't just someone who suddenly wakes up with the result. There's someone who repeatedly does the things that eventually create that result. And you can mentally rehearse those behaviors. Here's a really simple example. Don't think about a yellow lemon. Don't picture what it looks like. Don't imagine cutting it open. Don't imagine taking a bite. And don't imagine how sour it would taste. You probably pictured it anyway. That's how quickly your brain can create an image from just a few words. So if your brain can create a lemon that easily, you can also use that ability intentionally. Close your eyes and imagine yourself 1 year from now. Not some impossible fantasy version of yourself. Imagine a realistic version of you who has made significant progress. Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you around? What does a normal day look like? How do you behave differently? And most importantly, what does it feel like to be that person? Now, don't just imagine yourself standing there looking successful. Create a scene. Imagine a movement. Imagine getting out of bed. Imagine sitting at your desk. The more complete the scene becomes, the easier it is to mentally rehearse the behavior you're trying to develop. And there's another reason this matters. Your brain is constantly deciding what deserves your attention. You can't consciously process everything around you, so your mind filters an enormous amount of information. Think about when you learn a new word or buy a certain type of car. Suddenly, you start noticing that word or car everywhere. It didn't suddenly appear everywhere, you just became more aware of it. The same thing can happen with your goals. When you repeatedly think about what you're working toward, you can become more aware of the things that are relevant to it. You might notice an opportunity you would have ignored before. You might recognize someone who can help you. You might notice an idea that gives you a new direction. But this is where you have to be careful. Visualization isn't magic. Thinking about something doesn't guarantee that it will happen. The point is that visualization can help prepare your mind to recognize opportunities. In fact, I think visualization becomes much more powerful when you connect it directly to action. Don't visualize yourself being successful for an hour and then spend the rest of the day doing nothing. Visualize yourself doing the work, then go do it. If you want to become a better student, imagine yourself sitting down and actually studying, then study. If you want to become a better athlete, imagine yourself practicing, then practice. The visualization gives you a direction, the action gives you evidence, and the evidence is what starts changing the way you see yourself. Because eventually, you don't have to keep telling yourself that you're disciplined. You have proof. You practice when you didn't feel like it. You finish something difficult. And every one of those experiences tells your brain, this is who I am. You can also make this process easier by changing the things around you. Think about the objects you interact with every day: your room, your desk, your clothes, the music you listen to. All of these things can become reminders of where you're going. You don't need to spend a bunch of money doing this. You can simply organize your environment around the person you're trying to become. If you want to become someone who creates, keep your creative tools accessible. If you want to read more, keep a book somewhere you'll actually see it. If you want to exercise, make it easy to start. You're basically making your environment support the identity you're building. And you can use the same idea with a vision board. But don't just fill it with things you think would look cool. Make it represent your actual life. Instead of only picturing a huge house, imagine what you'd actually do inside of it. Instead of only picturing success, imagine what your ordinary Tuesday would look like after you've achieved it. Because your future isn't going to be one giant highlight reel. Most of your future will still be normal days. So visualize the normal days. Imagine waking up, going to work, creating something, talking to people you care about, working towards your goals, going to sleep feeling proud of how you spent the day. That's the life you're actually trying to build. And here's something else that's important. You don't need to wait until you have everything figured out before you start acting like the person you want to become. You can start today. You want to be confident? Practice speaking up. You want to be disciplined? Do the thing you keep avoiding. You want to be creative? Make something. You want to be successful? Start developing the skills that the successful version of you would have. You don't have to pretend you've already achieved your goals. You just have to start behaving in ways that move you towards them. Because eventually, your actions start becoming habits. Your habits start becoming patterns, and those patterns start becoming part of your identity. That's why I think the phrase, "it's already yours," can be useful when you look at it the right way. Not because you can simply imagine something and expect the universe to deliver it, but because you can start thinking, if this were really my future, how would I act today? What would you do? What would you stop doing? And what would you prioritize? Then start doing those things now. Because the goal isn't to convince yourself that you've already reached the destination. The goal is to become familiar with the person who can reach it. So take a few moments today and visualize that version of yourself. Make the scene specific. Don't just see a picture. Imagine the movement, the environment, and what you're doing. Imagine how you respond when something goes wrong. Then open your eyes and take one action that matches that version of you. Because visualization can show you where you're going, but your actions are what actually take you there. And the more often you rehearse that future in your mind and reinforce it through your actions, the less foreign it starts to feel. Eventually, the person you're imagining doesn't feel like some completely different version of you. It just feels like you. And that's when the real change starts.